Hi, everyone. My name is Alexis Voss, and this is Your Favorite Black Lobbyist podcast. So today, I just want to talk about my story. This is going to be just why I started the podcast, how did we get here, also kind of navigating new seasons. And so it's going to be pretty informal, just a discussion. But yeah, I'll kind of get into it. So, YFBL, right? What does that stand for? Again, Your Favorite Black Lobbyist. And it really originated. So I can actually start from the beginning. It actually started that God placed this on my heart years ago, actually when I was in college. It didn't look exactly this way, but it definitely was before podcasting was a thing, right? And so my close friends that know, they knew that I was like, okay, I'm going to do IG Live or I'm going to do like a YouTube Live, right? And at the time, I was starting to do little things to actually start it and lift it off, but it just didn't feel right for whatever reason. And fast forward to the end of 2023, the Lord convicted me and literally told me, He was like, "You gonna launch in 2025." I said, "Oh, okay, cool. Like, great." Because at the time in 2023, I had just started a new job, like a new corporate job. And so I'm like, "Oh, great. I'm going to have my 9 to 5. And then I'm going to have this on the side, make my little, my bi weekly income." Because if people know me, I am a bi-weekly corporate girly, right? So I thoroughly enjoy a stable income. Okay. So being a full entrepreneur was never a part of, I would say, my plans. And so when God, told me that, I'm like, okay, cool, great. I got connected. Everything just started aligning. I got connected with a creative director who's been helping me flesh out the brand for the past year and a half now. And we're now here at the start of 2025 where things started to happen on the job, right? Where I was, everything was going well until it just wasn't. And I unfortunately lost my job a few months ago, I would say in April of this year, 2025. And it's funny because I know some people are like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." I was actually, I was happy. I started to actually feel a little unfulfilled and it just no longer was becoming a fit for me. And so I actually started to have the desire to be a full-time entrepreneur and actually launch this brand and this podcast. And so, fast forward to now, here we are. And did I think that when God told me I was going to launch in 2025 that it was going to look like this and it was going to happen this way and that, I was going to be a full-time entrepreneur and figuring out things and navigating this new entire landscape? No. But I'm super grateful. I'm super excited and I'm thankful for not only just the opportunities, but also the path that God has been laying out for me to actually get here. And so it's just been alignment after alignment. And actually it's been very, I would say it's been, I can't put the adjective, but it's been something that has been filling my cup surprisingly. And so, I think it's one of those situations now where I'm very happy at where I am. It is new, it is foreign, and to be completely honest and transparent, I am very nervous. I'm so used to having in real life conversations and having these actual discussions, but it is different when you're talking to like a camera and there's no one engaging or responding, and you don't really know if what you're saying is resonating, right? But I think when I'm a woman of faith, and so when God is calling me to do something, I've learned to just be obedient, and I didn't want to be disobedient because I know what that's like. So, yeah. So I would definitely say it's been an interesting journey, but love it. So, yeah, I think it's definitely been a new journey navigating this season in my life that God is definitely calling me or transitioning me into. It's foreign. It's sometimes I struggle with it being a little confusing. But again, it's definitely been filling my cup in a lot of different ways that I didn't expect. And so, super grateful, super excited for this new journey in my life. And so, yeah, super excited for y'all to come along and see the growth and see how this is going to look and turn out. So YFBL, right? It stands for Your Favorite Black Lobbyist. And what does that mean? Where did that come from? And so it came from, the idea of making advocacy and policy not feel stiff, coming from an approachable human experience, right? Because when you're having these conversations with people, it's not always what you see on Instagram or on Twitter or, on the media, right? You have in real life conversations, and there's a human on the other side of that, whether they are in agreement with you or not, whether they believe in the same things or practice the same things you do or not, right? And so in my professional career, I was a lobbyist. I am a lobbyist. And so having to navigate the nuances of I don't agree with this person, but I have to hear them out. I have to understand where they're coming from because we all come from different backgrounds, experiences, family dynamics. And so a lot of that shapes who we are, right? And that doesn't even include our faith. If we are a person based and rooted in faith, right? That doesn't even include, what did our parents believe in? Because a lot of times what our parents believed in is what we now believe in. Or did we go to college and change to something completely different, right? Or did we go travel across the world and experience a different culture and change, what we thought we knew to what we now know? And so a lot of different things shapes who we are as a person and what we tend to believe and how we even vote and what we, decide to live our daily lives. And so, um, Your Favorite Black Lobbyist, YFBL, is coming from that approach, right? There's going to be topics and discussions, especially what's going on now in today's world, where it's a lot to unpack, right? How does this impact me on a daily? How does this impact me as a person of faith? How does this impact me in wellness, right? As my well-being, and just how to take in this information and still be okay, right? Because some of this can seem scary to a lot of people. And so I want to be able to have these conversations, have this platform to where we're actually able to now have these real conversations, whether we agree with each other or not. I'm here to hear you out. You're here to hear me out. And, we're here to exist as people because that's how I believe God created us to be as connectors. And so that's kind of where it was rooted in. And again, I'm super excited for this journey and for where this platform is going to take off. So a little bit about me. Who is Alexis outside of YFBL, right? Who is Alexis Boss? And yes, that is my real last name. People think it's fake. But who is Alexis? And so Alexis Boss is, a woman who was raised in Southern Georgia, right? By strong, beautiful Black women and men. And a lot of that shaped who I am of my upbringing. I was raised in a real small country town in near Savannah, Georgia. Not everybody knows where it is. Shout out to McIntosh County, Darien, Georgia, 912. But yeah, so you know, I was raised in Darien, Georgia. But also I was raised in the Metro Atlanta area, so I kind of have a little bit of city and country to me, makes for a little razzle dazzle. Did a lot of my schooling in the Metro Atlanta area, and graduated from University of Georgia with my bachelor's in political science and international affairs. And just a slight history, career history, I would say is that how I got into lobbying, because everyone's like, "What is a lobbyist? How did you get into that? You know, is that even something that's a major? Can you major in that?" So how did I want to become a lobbyist? How did I figure that out and know that was the fit for me? What I did was I tailored the job to me instead of tailoring myself to the job. And what that means is that I wanted to ensure that when the career that I was going into was a good fit for me, right? So when I did an internship actually at the University of Georgia in Washington, D.C., I realized I'm a person, I'm not a paper pusher. I can't sit in front of a computer all day. I lose focus very easily. And so, and on top of that, I like the flexibility that my day to day doesn't look like it's not monotonous, right? And so, being a lobbyist in the field that I'm in, or the industry that I'm in, it really allowed me that work schedule, and it worked better for me. It worked better for how I am how I'm the most productive, how I am able to process and think. And so anytime I give advice to like interns or people like that are my mentees, I always tell them to ensure that you make sure don't you it's so easy to get caught up into your work so much that you lose yourself, right? And you can be then that's the best way to become very unhappy, right? And I know some people are like, "Oh, happiness is like as you get older, you'll realize peace and happiness is rare to come by. And when you realize you spend most of your time with the people and at your job that you work with. And I've been in toxic work environments or in work environments where I love the work that I did, but the people I just didn't care for, to be completely honest. And it made it extremely difficult for me to show up my best version of myself each and every day for 40 hours plus a week. And I had to learn, sadly, the hard way because it did, after a while, impact my mental health and my well being of how not only I showed up at my job, but also how I showed up in my relationships with my family, with my friends, with my significant others. And even for myself, I was looking in the mirror, I didn't like who I saw. And so it got to, I live by that mantra, let me say that. As I live by this mantra because you know, it's very important to ensure that if I'm going to be doing this work, right, I want to be happy doing it, right? And I know some people think, I was actually told when I was younger that that's not real, right? You're not going to always enjoy the work. You're not going to enjoy everything. And it's like, call me an optimist, but yes, you're not going to always enjoy every single one of your coworkers. Yeah, they're going to get on your nerves at some point in time. But at some point, you should enjoy the work that you do, right? You should want to have some level of joy getting up in the morning or in the evenings going to your job, whether that is a 9 to 5 or whether you are your own boss. Whatever that looks like for you, you should have some kind of joy. And so that was something I was very intentional about when I was looking for a career. So when I found that lobbyist was an actual career for me or a subsect of political science and international affairs, I said, oh, sign me up. And I got connected with beautiful people that I'm work with still to this day, that I'm friends with still to this day. And I worked with great organizations and companies that put me in spaces of CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and just put me in spaces that I couldn't even think I would be a part of to this day. And so I'm super grateful for, again, the journey that I'm on, not only just within the entrepreneurial space, but also within my professional career space as being a lobbyist, because it has allowed me to afford to be able to do a lot of other things in this as well that I'm able to do now. So super excited. But yeah, that's a little bit about me in the sense of like my professional career. And I can go so deep into like what a lobbyist is and breaking everything down. But I think for time's sake, we'll get to that another episode for sure. I pretty much advocate on behalf of, policy related issues for a company or organization. And so with my life being an advocacy and how that can look different, right, for everyone, because I know a lot of people are used to seeing advocacies and protests, advocacy related things, you know, with Congress, with your state legislature and the local side. There's a lot of different ways you can get involved in advocacy, right? And so um, I think the beauty of the work that I do is that I've always growing up, wanted to make a change, make a difference. And I always saw at a young age that making a difference in the legislative space was the best place to do that. To make actual change that can impact the laws, that impacts disenfranchised communities. And so that's something that's always been a goal of mine at heart. And so lobbying was that avenue for me for sure. And so kind of segueing into like what my day-to-day life looks like as a lobbyist is, it's a mix of boardrooms. It's a mix of, policy briefings, but also too, outside of that, I do a lot of, external events where a lot of my work is relationship building, right? So I'm doing a lot of talking. If I want to make change, if you want to make change, sometimes you don't always make that change by asking someone to do something that doesn't know you, right? People that don't really know you or kind of know what you're doing or about isn't always going to buy into it. And so you have to build relationships with people and connect with people. And so I think that's the beauty of why I wanted to start this platform, is finding another way to connect with people on a different level, a different scale, because I see the beauty in the connections that I make every day with people I just meet and don't really know that well. And now have beautiful relationships with them because you just actually get to know people and talk to people and are open to either what they have to say or just listening to their story. And so I think I'm so used to that in just my professional career that segueing into the podcast realm, I guess wouldn't be too difficult, except, in the solo days I'm looking at a camera. So yeah, but I definitely would say that on this journey that I've been on to get here, it's definitely been a mix of boardrooms and, a lot of healing. Like I mentioned, I've been in toxic work environments, right? And so it takes a lot of healing. It takes a lot of active work, right? And so the brand YFBL stems from not only just policy advocacy related topics and discussions, but also well-being, because no one really tells you how to navigate spaces when you go into that 9 to 5 corporate job, right? Especially as a person of color or a Black woman in that space where you're the only person really on your team. No one really tells you how to navigate the life of being an entrepreneur and navigate things by yourself or in team and group settings that have different personalities, and having to figure out, you still have to figure out yourself, right? There's these different nuances and complexities of navigating life in the spaces that you're in. And it still involves the well-being part, right? You still have to take care of yourself. You still have to learn how to rest, which I had to learn the hard way because I'm actually just recovering from burnout, right? I left my 9 to 5 job and went straight into being an entrepreneur full speed ahead. And I was I was working out, or I am working out 4 or 5 days a week. I'm singing in the choir on Sundays, and it takes a lot out of you. And when you're in different spaces doing different things. And I say that because you never really know how fast and how hard you're going until your body shuts down on you, or until getting out of bed becomes more of a task than an everyday, thing of gratitude, right? And when that started to become the norm for me, where I was like, I got 7 to 8 hours of sleep and I felt like I've only had 2. And it was becoming extremely hard to get out of bed. And I had a moment in time where I was nervous that I was depressed. And I was like, well, I don't feel depressed. I'm fine, all those things. But all in all, to say is that no one really tells you these things, right? Until you experience them. No one really knows how to navigate new seasons in your life, especially when you're transitioning and it wasn't by your choice, right? Even though I was happy that I left my corporate job, I didn't want to leave. And I think that's a big thing of, I became very, very comfortable in where I was in life. I was making good money. I, knew the job. I was making connections. I was living. I was cool. I was chilling. And it got to a point where I said, where God was transitioning me forcibly out of this corporate job into something that is foreign. I was like, oh, like, I really am not okay. I probably should have took more time. Even though I was happy to be out of that corporate job, or that particular environment or situation, I still didn't fully understand and wasn't ready to accept that I had to be in this place of my life today. And, again, there's no guidebook to life, right? There's no how to live your life for dummies, right? I think that book would be sold out every day, to be honest. But it's just one of the situations where it's a real thing. And I wanted to create this platform to not only tell my why, but to be completely honest and transparent and be completely authentic. Because, again, I'm not the only person experiencing this, especially in today's time. A lot of people are experiencing layoffs. A lot of people are, struggling with either in their jobs or struggling to find a job, or having to navigate now becoming, if they want to be an entrepreneur, that business, or if that's something they want to do, because we're just living in different, we're living in a different time economically, right? So it's a lot of different things that's happening at once, not only just economically in the foreign policy space, in, the domestic space of the United States, and also just in a more micro level of people's everyday lives. People have real things going on, whether it's financially, whether it's mentally, emotionally, and these are the nuances of life that a lot of people don't really discuss, because we're just used to taking it on the chin and just keep it going. But like I mentioned, earlier, keeping it going then turns into, now your body gave out. You know what I'm saying? Now it's hard for you to get out of bed, and now your body only can take so much, right? Until you can't take it anymore. And I've seen people outside of myself have breakdowns, just wake up crying and sad, because now they wake up, because they've done it for so long, and they look in the mirror and they don't either recognize themselves, or they don't like what they see, or so they don't even recognize who they see. Right. And I know I was a person who was very intentional of being healed from that and going through that healing process from being in a space of that years ago, that I didn't want to go back to that version of me, because I didn't like who she was. And so I will say, with the nuance of the work that I do, this platform, and just also my everyday life, it's all a combination of what this brand is about. Talking about policy and the things that's happening in today's world, because it all affects us in different ways. No matter who you voted for, no matter whether you're red or blue, or it doesn't matter. It all still impacts us. It doesn't matter who's in office, what administration it is. None of that matters, because at the end of the day, we all are experiencing very similar wakes of life. And I think it's one of those situations where, the brand talks about that. It talks about wellness and how you show up, and how does those different things impact you and your well-being. Not in just policy, but also when you go to work every day, how is that impacting you? Do you rest? Is that something you prioritize in your life? Do you prioritize, anything outside of your work, or do you mostly just prioritize your work, right? Is your relationships on, with your family, friends, is that on the wayside, on the back burner? All of that makes a difference. And then, of course, like I said, I'm a woman of faith. I'm a Christian woman who believes in God actively and is a follower of Christ. And that also on my journey with Christ, that has been impacting some of the decisions that I make. That has also been, impacting how I show up a lot of times, whether it's in the corporate environment, in the workspace, and or, when it comes to making policy decisions. I will also disclaim that I am not bringing in my personal beliefs and feelings in my professional work environment when it comes to me lobbying. But I definitely, know how sometimes that can impact people when you are advocating on behalf of something you maybe don't believe in. And a lot of people actually experience that. So I know I said a lot in a handful, but that's the complexities, right? YFBL is me. YFBL is you. YFBL is a lot of people that are experiencing very similar things. Whether you are into politics or not, it doesn't have to be that. It's the approachable effect of we're human. We're all trying to figure this out together, and we're all trying to figure out how we can show up, hopefully, as the best person or version of ourselves, especially if you can connect with all those 3 pillars that I mentioned. We're going to talk about different things outside of just what's happening in the world, outside of the administration and, policy related things, right? Those things are also important, but I also want to bring in things that are light in the mood because other things are happening outside of what's happening in the policy arena. And so, super excited to start this journey with everybody. I am so looking forward to continuing. It's also, and with these conversations, I will be unpacking them solo, but also we'll have guests. So, look out for the guests that I'll have on. We're going to have a plethora of different topics, and I'm super excited. But also, I want to hear from you. Tell me the topics that you want to hear. Drop your comments. I want to hear from you, okay? Let's talk more about what's happening in the world. Follow, subscribe, like, repost, share with your friends, right? Let's get this out here. Send me your DMs, and like I said, I really want to hear from you. This is a two-way street, right? So if it's about spirituality, if it's about politics and advocacy, if it's about just your well-being and you thought about cussing out that coworker, but you didn't. Proud of you, sis. I want to hear all of it. It all matters here. I'm super excited to be on this journey with you. Thank you so much for tuning in and look forward to hearing you in the next episode.